I wanted to talk to you about joy, but there's a whole lot about joy that requires background. You know, there was a blessed Julian of Norwich. She lived about 700 years ago. And she made a statement that caught me in a way that I never forgot. She said, the greatest honor you can give to Almighty God, greater than your sacrifices, your penances, your mortifications, the greatest honor that you can give to Almighty God is to live joyfully because of the knowledge of His love. Now imagine that. I mean, we've all been trained pretty much to see that Christianity is essentially about the cross. And the more we suffer, the more we sacrifice, the more penance we do, the holier we become. But here she's saying the greatest honor you can give to Almighty God is to have enough faith in His love that you will live joyfully, that it will carry into your day-to-day life. To live joyfully because of the knowledge of His love. This is a great, great act of faith. So I've been trying to write about that for years, and I have a dozen books or more, really, carrying these themes forward. Maybe the first set of ideas that I'd like to give you is basically this. You know, the supreme law, thou shalt love the Lord thy God with thy whole heart, thy whole soul, and thy whole mind. Deuteronomy 6, Jesus repeated it himself more than once. So the supreme law, love God, love neighbor, love self. I like to reduce it to a slightly different expression, like three things. You only have to do three things. Cling to God, think of others, and don't put yourself down, which is essentially love yourself. Because if you put yourself down all the time, you're not going to really have a joyful spirit. So let's take it one by one. Cling to God. Actually, you do that, don't you? If you're watching this program, looking at a priest talking and giving your time in a busy day, cling to God is something that you, looking for inspiration, you want to get closer to God. So let's say the first part of the supreme law you're doing on a routine basis. You cling to God. You try to pray. You do the best you can. The second thing is think of others. You do that. I mean, you may not be Mother Teresa, you may not be working in the slums for the poorest of the poor, but if you're a family person, you're putting food on the table for the kids. When you have a headache, when you are feeling down and out, and you're preparing a meal because you have responsibilities, there's a kind of thinking of others, to say the least. You shop, you cook. I mean, the daily duties of life, whether you're a teacher, a nurse, a doctor, a lawyer, or a businessman, or a builder, your whole perspective is thinking of others. So I don't think anybody has to coax you too much to think of others. It's part of life. If you put a little spiritual motivation on top of that, it would help you a great deal in this sense that if, for the glory of God or for the love of God, you visit the sick, or you listen to somebody who's complaining and you really want to get away, but you listen anyway, you put yourself out a little bit to help others, what you're doing is practicing what St. Paul said. St. Paul put it very simply. Help carry one another's burdens. In that way, you will fulfill the law of Jesus Christ. So if you have that attitude, that without being a religious fanatic or standing out on a soapbox, trying to let people think you're a great spiritual person, just helping out here and there, being kind, you're thinking of others. So the three things in the supreme law: cling to God, you do that. Think of others, you're doing that all the time. And the third, don't put yourself down. Now there's where I have a problem with you. You put yourself down all the time. I'm not good enough. I'm not tall enough. I'm not handsome or beautiful enough. I'm not persistent. I'm not smart enough. I'm not intellectually bright. nobody likes me. I mean, all of this negativity that you take into your life and you add to your woes day in and day out, this is just plain antagonistic to the concept of joy. If you're going to be a joyful person, you've got to reduce the negativity. So in the supreme law, if you're going to love yourself, love God, love neighbor, love yourself, you've got to stop putting yourself down. And this takes some will training. I mean, this takes deliberate advertence to the fact that you are a worrier or a complainer. And worst of all, if you're given over to self-pity, I have to tell you, self-pity is the cancer of the soul. If you have self-pity going strongly, and it can be a habit, you know, woe is me, I never got a break, this is, so it's going to tear you apart. One of the characteristics of an alcoholic or a drug addict, in 90% or more of the cases, so not everybody, when you hear their story, it will be filled with self-pity. They will be presenting to you that I am a victim. I'm in the situation I'm in because my wife did this, or my wife abused the children, and I'm trying to get the children's love, but she abused them and turned them against me. Hey, did you do anything wrong in your life to turn the children against you? You never did anything. It's her fault. They don't tend to take blame for what they do, and you have to take with a grain of salt when you're listening to their story. And I don't mean to put them down and disbelieve, but I would be, you know, I ran a drug and alcohol rehabilitation center for a few years at Eva's Village in Patterson. So I'm familiar with the alcoholic mind, and even a person who's gained sobriety can be given to the tendency to self-pity. Like, when they come into the rehabilitation, they're saying things like, I'll never make it, this program isn't going to work, I've been through this 1,000 times, and nobody's really for me, I've never got a break, I'm going to die with a needle in my arm. So how are you going to recover from alcoholism if you think, or drug addict, if you think thoughts like that? You're not. So we put them through maybe 6 months of mind training, of courses to help them develop the 12-step spirituality, where they turn over their life to God. In fact, the third step is turn over their life and their will to the God of their understanding. They came to realize that they're powerless over their drug or their drink, powerless. But there is a power out there greater than their own, and because they are aware of the fact that there's a power and they're powerless, third step, the most important, decided to turn my life and my will over to the God of my understanding. And unspoken part of that is, and he will do for me what I have not been able to do for myself. So in a way, they give God responsibility for their addiction and ask him to take away the desire for drugs. Because all they're doing is medicating themselves. They're medicating themselves because the burden they carry, the emotional pain they carry is so severe, they need relief and they take drugs or drink or whatever. And it takes away the burden after a while, but it comes back. So I'm not putting down the alcoholic or the drug addict. I'm just saying because they didn't love themselves enough, they succumbed to self-pity. Self-pity, blaming others, and not getting the will to see their way out. And sometimes the will doesn't work too well, and so they have to turn their will over to the God of their understanding. And the miracle is, and this isn't pie in the sky, this isn't a priest talking, giving you piety. Hundreds of thousands and millions have recovered from addiction to alcoholism and drug addiction because they allowed the Lord into their life, and he brought a power to relieve them from the addiction. So you've got to trust me when I say, no matter what your situation, you can be lifted out of it if you turn your life and your will over to the Lord of your understanding. The rest of the 12 steps are basically carrying it out. Took an inventory of all the harm I've done, and I tried to make amends. And all of that is good, but it's the essential thing is the surrender. When you hit bottom, you surrender to the power of God. So I'm speaking to you about joy. And if you're into joylessness, if you're not a joyful person, you have a habitual state of mind that is really bringing you down, and you have to break it the way a person breaks an addiction. So you have to give up self-pity, and you have to take out the negative thinking, and you have to bring yourself to a level of harmony with God and begin to love yourself. Take responsibility for your life. That's the big thing. Take responsibility for your life. Now, the primacy of the human will is involved in this. And I'm not putting it on the same level that you must stop drinking because it's within your power and you have the will. You know, I think Nancy Reagan's "just say no" is a little simplistic, and anybody in the work of drug and alcohol rehabilitation counseling knows that just say no doesn't work because they want to say no. They give their life to be able to say no, but when they get in difficulties, they need a drink. And however, there is this other thing that enters when you're on a supernatural level and you begin to live this 12-step program. But nevertheless, let me talk to you about the primacy of the will. I'm going to give you a little course in Psychology 101, okay? So you'll begin maybe to understand better, because I know you're a smart person and you do see this, but let me clarify something for you.